As we move into this time of prayer and meditation, I want us to pray for all the people today that feel heavy-hearted, that don't feel like their life is moving forward the way they wanted it to. Maybe you're disappointed or fearful. Even those that feel cursed or unlucky. Let all those who just carry the burdens of the world, that today we see them just being divinely blessed. We see the heaviness of their mind and heart and soul being lifted. That they rise to new heights. That they give their burdens to God and are made new from the inside out. That so many times in our life we carry the burdens of the past. We carry the pain and the regret. We carry the unforgiveness. And today we just let it all go. We let go of all that has been. We let go and we give it to God. And that whatever we give to God is instantly purified and comes back as grace. So today, search your heart. Wherever your heart has been heavy, wherever you have felt burdened, wherever you have been disappointed, give your cares to God. And we do this not only for ourselves, we do it for every man, woman, and child around the planet. That we are praying for a deep, powerful spiritual transformation. That the heaviness of our souls be transformed by the pure light of God. That God's love makes all things new again. That whatever you have believed, whatever you have feared, whatever you have resisted, today we see the pain of yesterday just wiped away. And your soul is brand new. You are whole and complete and lacking in nothing. You are God's shining star. And God's calling you right now to live a higher experience of life. God is tapping on the door of your heart, saying, open to all the good that God is. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for a complete soul transformation, for the heaviness to vanish, for the pain to be gone, for the light, the love, the abundance of God to fill us to overflowing. And so let's take a moment now in the silence to let the activity of Spirit do a mighty work in your mind, your heart, your soul, making you brand new. Holy Spirit, I am ready to release the past. I'm ready to be blessed in greater and greater ways. I'm ready to know the truth and to allow the truth to set me free. I am one with all that you are. Claim it, I know it, and I live it this day to the fullest. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen. Okay, you ready for today? I want to begin by doing a little shout out to everybody who's watching us online, everybody who's downstairs. Thank you for being a part of our ministry. And I also want to thank Dave and Rebecca and Jessica for our online. How many of you have ever watched one of our talks online, right? So when the pandemic hit, a year and a half ago, we had never had a video message online, not regular, not weekly. And within a week, these amazing souls helped create a weekly video service. So you guys shout out to that wonderful work. We are now reaching people all over the country. Last month, somebody who's I don't think's ever been here in person did a $2,600 stock transfer to the church. And so that ministry is going out in all directions to people all over the country, and your support allowed that to happen. So thank you for all the ways that you support this ministry and the reach and the breadth that we now have as a ministry to a much more global community. All right? So thank you. Now, when you came in today, hopefully you received a small slip of paper. If you didn't receive one, raise your hand and our ushers will bring you a small slip of paper. And if you don't have one, you can use your phone. It looks like everybody's got one. Fabulous. It worked well. Good job. All right. So today, I'm already speaking in tongues and I just started. Today, I'm going to continue on a series talking about luck that we started last week. And what's interesting about talking about luck is that some very spiritually minded people do not believe that luck is a thing, right? They believe everything is grace, everything is blessings, and luck is kind of not really talked about a lot. And last week I shared with you my own relationship with luck and my own thoughts and feelings about it. And what was interesting also about last week is I used the movie clip, the movie line from this Dirty Harry, do you feel lucky? And that, I don't know if you noticed, last Sunday in Parade Magazine, Clint Eastwood was on the cover of Parade Magazine saying, I'm a very lucky person. And that happened to be our affirmation from last week. So let's begin right there. I am a very lucky person. Let's say it like we mean it. I am a very lucky person. One more time, just for grins. I am a very lucky person. And what's fun about that is, we had a lady walk in the service and said, I won 3 things this week at a raffle, and I knew I was going to win. And what I want you to see is that when we change consciousness, when we change our thinking, when we change our feeling, we change our reality. True? Right? And so we're playing with this idea of luck, but we're really using spiritual principles. And just like we're changing our relationship with luck, we could also change our relationship with health or abundance or love or relationships, because the principles that we're teaching absolutely apply to any area of your life. So the book that we're using as the basis of these series of talks is Conscious Luck by Gay Hendricks. And he's one of my favorite authors. I just love his work. He did a thing called The Big Leap, that was just about joy and about expanding beyond where we've been before. I just love his work, and that's the only reason I read the book, because of him, right? So let's begin. Mark Benedict, who wrote a book on sales, said this: you can create your own luck just like a cloud can create its own rain. You create your own luck by the way you act, think, feel, and talk. If these ingredients that you're using to create your luck are distorted, then what will follow is bad luck all the way, like a thunderstorm. But if you're especially careful to watch how you think, the sweet aroma of good luck will rain upon you almost everywhere you go, right? So how many of you are open to the sweet aroma of good luck will rain down upon you almost everywhere you go? Doesn't that sound fabulous? I want the sweet aroma of good luck to rain down on every aspect of our life. So this week, we're going to focus on the idea of releasing barriers. How many of you can think of maybe a time in your past where you felt like you had a barrier between you and God? Like where you felt deep in your heart that you weren't as blessed, you weren't as lucky as you knew you could be. A barrier is defined as a fence or an obstacle that prevents movement or access. Like as a spiritual being, do you want anything to prevent you from accessing all the good that God is? Like that idea of spiritual movement, that we have that ability to move in the infinite goodness of God, right? And that's where we're going. As a spiritual person, what we want is to really move into higher and higher levels of God's good. Now, as a human being, if we look at the difference between a barrier and a boundary, as a human being, sometimes we need to limit access to other children of God, right? Because sometimes when people around us are not making interesting choices, have you ever had somebody around you make an interesting choice? And you realize that their choices were so interesting, like that there needed to be a little distance between you and them, right? One of my favorite definitions of a boundary is this, from Prentice Humfield, said this: boundaries are the distance at which boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. Let me read it again. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. So sometimes there are individuals in our life where we need to say, you just need to take a step back, right? But we never say that to God, right? So in our human interactions, sometimes we bump. But what I want you to see today is I don't want there to be any barrier that you have to the infinite goodness of God, that we have no boundaries. Now, do we have free will? Right? And what's interesting about that is because of free will, we have a God-given right to be as miserable as we need to be. Right? Because we have free will, we actually get to define how much good comes into our life. Because God will never force itself upon us. Right? We actually have to be willing to be in the flow of God's good. So through free will, we also remove the boundaries that keep us from that flow. Now, there are 4 different ways to look at boundaries, 4 different levels of our being, right? The first one is spiritual. From a spiritual point of view, can you ever be separate from God? Never. Like from a spiritual point of view, because your spiritual nature is spirit, right? You can't separate yourself from God. From a spiritual point of view, you could never be separate from God. I am one with the full goodness of God. Will you say that with me? I am one with the full goodness of God. So from a spiritual point of view, you can never separate yourself from God. Now, from a physical point of view, can you remove yourself from the infinite goodness of God? No. No, because you exist. Like what I want you to see, because you exist, you are in the field of all existence, right? And you will always exist. Even if you're no longer physical, you are still going to exist. And so physically, you cannot separate yourself from good. Now, mentally, can you separate yourself from God? Yes, right? Mentally, you can entertain an idea or a concept or a belief and mentally separate yourself from God. Is it spiritually true? No. Is it spiritually accurate? No. But only in your mind can you create an illusion of a reality where you are separate from God. Only in your mind, only in your thinking can you create a paradigm that separates you from God. But spiritually and physically, because you exist, you are part of existence. And what's crazy wonderful about being a spiritual being is whether you're in form or out of form, you still exist. Well, Richard, how do you know that? I just do. If I told you how I knew that, it would just create more conversations, right? But you have always existed and you will always exist. And because you exist, you can only separate yourself in your mind. And can you separate yourself from God emotionally? Yes. You can feel separate from God, right? Have you ever had a feeling that you can't have the good that you want? Have you ever had a feeling that God feels far away from you? So only in your mind and your emotions can you actually separate yourself. And that is really just because that's the way you've constructed it. It's not really true, but it feels true to you. And the more that it feels true to you because of free will, the more that it actually impacts your life. So as we've talked today about removing the barriers, are we going to have to remove any spiritual barriers? No, because there's no barriers between you and God spiritually. Are we going to have to remove any physical barriers? No, because there's no physical barriers between you and God. The only barriers that we ever have to remove are the barriers of mind and emotion. Mentally and emotionally, there sometimes can be barriers that keep you out of the flow of the infinite. And we want to remove those so that you become, together, I am a very lucky person. One more time. I am a very lucky person. Now, if you walk around thinking I'm not a lucky person, does that impact your life? Yes. Right? Because you have free will. You're creating a mental construct that says I'm separate from God, or I'm unlucky, or I'm bad, or I'm awful, or I'm cursed, or I'm doomed. Like whatever thoughts you think, right, actually creates a construct that impacts your manifestation. It impacts your experience. So as we remove the mental and emotional barriers, you live in the flow of the divine. Are you ready? That's what we're going to do. Take a deep breath. I am ready to have all barriers that separate me from God to be removed. Together? I am ready to have all barriers that separate me from God to be removed. One more time like we mean it. I am ready to have all barriers that separate me from God be removed. Now, is that true? Yes. Because you speak it into existence, it actually begins to form a new reality for you. Now, sometimes I get too woo-woo for my own good. All right. From the book of Acts, it says, For in him we live, move, and have our being. Is that true? So spiritually, is that true? That you are created to express the infinite goodness of God, that you are one with the infinite and the infinite is one with you. True? Okay, great. Gay Hendricks says, old mental patterns become stubborn, tenacious default positions that we slip back into quickly if we are not paying attention. So can you think of maybe one or two old beliefs or old thought patterns that you've had about yourself that are less than helpful? You could think that you're ugly or terrible or bad, and those thought patterns, because you've thought them 1,000 million times before, become dominant. And what we're doing today is actually changing those thought patterns, and we're relating it to being lucky. Now, could you use what I'm teaching today in any area of your life? Yes, because it's a spiritual principle. So if you don't want to create greater luck, fine, don't, right? Create greater health or greater love or greater joy or greater abundance, but you can apply the principles equally to any area of your life. Can I get an amen? Thank you. Here we go. So old mental patterns become stubborn and tenacious default positions that help us slip back into quickly if we are not paying attention. To get a constant flow of good luck in your life, make a point of noticing how often you revert to old concepts of yourself as unlucky. When you notice your thoughts have gravitated back to the old I'm not a lucky pattern, not a lucky person pattern, gently direct your mind back to your new commitment. And the new commitment I gave you last week. I and your name make a sincere commitment to being lucky now and forever, right? So what we want to do is then just move our thought process from the dominant idea that I'm unlucky to the dominant idea that I'm lucky. And we do that by paying attention to our thought process. You know, I did a talk a couple of weeks ago where I talked about mind mastery. And the idea of mind mastery is that most of us, our thought process needs adult supervision. Because if we just tell ourselves the truth, some of us think thoughts that are not becoming a child of God. True? What we think about ourselves, what we think about others, what we think about life, they're just not the highest and the best. And so if we're not managing our thought process, our thought process can get to some pretty seedy places, right? And what we're in the process of doing now is taking dominion over our own mind, taking dominion over our thought process. And that every time we begin to think or feel that we're unlucky, we've entertained a new thought. Let's put it up there. I, blank, or your name. You can affirm for me my name if you want to, right? Sometimes I'm just funnier than I think I am, you know? I, Richard Rogers, make a sincere commitment to being lucky now and forever. That is our new, for the next 5 weeks, that is our new dominant thought. And over again, we're going to come back to that dominant thought. I make a sincere commitment to being lucky now and forever. Let's say that together. Insert your name or my name, you decide, right? But here we go. I make a sincere commitment to being lucky now and forever. And forever. Ever is a long time, right? With God, it's a long time. Now, can you see that you could pluck out the word lucky and put in any spiritual quality? You could put health. You could put abundance. You could put love. You could put in any spiritual idea. So we're using luck because it's fun. How many of you have, this week, as you've been saying, I feel lucky or I am lucky, how many has your joy gone up? Remember, I talked about it a little bit last week. Remember the episode where Oprah gave a car away to everybody in the audience that day? It was back in, I think, 1986. She gave a car to everybody in the room. The joy in that room went off the charts, right? It was crazy. Like they said, this one lady was going to get a car, and then she just said, everybody's going to get a car. And people lost their ever-loving minds, right? They did. The joy went up. And so the reason that we're playing with this concept of luck is that there's a high degree of joy that's attached to luck. The more you feel lucky, the happier you get. The more you experience luck in your life, the happier you get. If you want a trip to Hawaii this week, how happy would you be? Oh, I'd be worried about getting sunburnt. I just don't want to go. Then give it to me, right? And watch my joy go up, right? Because the more we feel lucky, the happier we become. Because really, joy is the byproduct of every spiritual quality. Joy is the byproduct of every time you get closer to God. Every time you live a better life, every time you integrate spiritual principles, joy is the natural outcome. Today, what we're going to do, though, is we're going to begin to move and change your mental process. So the first thing that he says to do is that every time you feel unlucky, every time you're not feeling blessed, we want you to go back to your new dominant statement. I, Richard Rogers, make a sincere commitment to being lucky now and forever. I'm going to be reading from page 39 again, Gay Hendricks' book, The Conscious Luck. Point 1, you, like everyone, have a default position of old mental attitudes that beckon the newly awakened part of your mind to go back to sleep again in the safe confines of your limited beliefs. I wish that wasn't true, right? I wish that we could have an insight or a new understanding and instantly fully integrate it into every part of us. But for most of us, that's not the way it works. For most of us, we have been thinking old thoughts for so long that we have to be more responsible for a new thought than just one and done. We have to take that new thought and really integrate it. To judge or condemn the false thought with the old limiting belief is to keep that thought locked in. How many of you have heard the idea that what you resist tends to persist? So when you resist an old limited belief, guess what it does? Your resistance actually empowers it. So what we're wanting to do is just gently sweep it away. Point number 3. You need to cultivate the art form, the art of gently letting go of attachments to the old patterns and shifting to the new commitment to a better person, to being lucky now and forever, as easily as you slip into a perfect fitting pair of shoes, right? So when you notice yourself going back to the old thought, I'm lucky, I wonder if I'm going to be blessed, I wonder if this is all going to work out, you actually have to then redirect your mind to a new idea. How many of you have ever read The Golden Key? Emmett Fox's Golden Key. Only 5 pages long, right? It's a work of art. It's fabulous, right? 5 pages, Golden Key. What he says, Emmett Fox says in this little booklet, is that every time you focus on the energy, your focus is off of God. And the Golden Key says every time you focus on the problem, you're actually not helping yourself. You're actually empowering the problem. And what he says is just gently move your focus back to God. Just gently move your focus back to infinite possibilities. And the same is here. That every time you feel unlucky, every time you worry if something's going to work out, every time you're concerned that you're not going to be blessed, just go back to your statement. I, Richard Rogers, make a sincere commitment to being lucky now and forever. And what does that do? It mentally moves your thought process off of yesterday, off the problem, and onto God, onto a greater possibility. So that's one. That's the mental side. Now, do you understand that that's your homework for this week? Like that every time you notice your thinking needs supervision, you just bring it back to a higher thought. Now, let's work on the emotional side. Are you willing to work on the emotional side of this? Dave, give me the next slide. One of the things he talks about in the book is to make a luck timeline. And really what he says is it's really, and I added the unlucky time, it's really an unlucky timeline. And so if you've got a piece of paper now, what I want you to write down, and there's some questions, I want you to write down the first time and there should be pens in front of you. I want you to write down the first time you remember feeling unlucky. Now, was it before you were born? Was it before I could walk, before I was in elementary school, when I was in elementary school, junior high, high school, college, or after I finished going to school, right? Those are all the choices. I want to see if you can remember a time when you felt unlucky. And if you felt profoundly unlucky. Now, in Unity, do we spend a lot of time focused on the negative? No. So am I going to invite you to focus on this negative situation for the next 5 years? No, I'm not. I'm going to invite you to move the energy off of this negative experience and bring it where? Into this moment. Okay? So I want you to think about, and write it down. If you can't think of anything, God bless you. I'll give you one of mine. Right? But I want you to think about a time in your life where you felt unlucky. And if you can think of a time where you felt profoundly unlucky, and then just write, you don't have to give me the whole story. Nobody's going to read this. This is just for you. You can say the time when I didn't get my white go-go boots, or I didn't get my baby Wetzelot doll, or my G.I. Joe rifle, or whatever it was. I want you to write the time when you can think of a time when you felt unlucky, when you didn't get the prom date you wanted, or whatever it was, right? I want you to write it down. And what we're going to do now, once you write it down, if it takes more than a sentence, you're not writing it for anybody else but for you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move the energy off of that experience and move it into now. Are you willing to do that? And the way that we're going to do that, and I've tested this. I had my wife yesterday afternoon I said, I want you to do this exercise, and I want to see if it works. Because it works for me, but I want to make sure it worked for you. So I had her think of a time when she felt unlucky. She wrote it down. I said, now here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this 10 times. You're going to point to that piece of paper and that experience, and you're going to say, that was then, this is now. Okay? So we're actually going to take that emotional energy that has been stuck in that place. Now, how many of you can hold a hot pan for more than about 10 minutes? No, nobody can do that. Why can you not do that? Because your body is actually smarter than your emotions, right? How many of you can think of a painful emotional experience that you've been holding for more than 10 minutes? Right? So what we're going to do then is move that emotional energy off of that painful experience and onto now. And then when you leave today, you can just throw that slip of paper away because you've now released the energy from it. So we're going to do it 10 times. You're going to point to the piece of paper that has that experience in it, and you're going to say, that was then, this is now. You ready? Start with your finger on the piece of paper. Get your pointer out. Does everybody have their pointer out? I want you to get your pointer out. Okay, ready? That was then, this is now. 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 I think that was 6. That was then, this is now. 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 I think that's 10, but we're going to do one more for an extra measure. That was then, this is now. Now, how many of you, after the first time, is like, I don't really feel it, but after 5 or 6 times, you could begin to feel that you've starting to move your energy off that painful experience and onto now? Because whatever you give to God is instantly purified and comes back to you as grace. Like whatever painful thing you give to God is instantly purified and comes back to bless you. Because God is the only thing in the universe that can never be polluted. So every time you let go of something and bring that energy back into the now, it comes back to you as grace. Jesus talked in an analogy about sweeping the house clean. And what we're doing right now is sweeping your emotional house clean. I'm going to tell a bad story, a bad joke, right? It's just awful, and I'm going to tell it anyway, okay? So these 4 guys go out, and I know it's awful, so don't email me. So these 4 guys go out to play golf. And the first 9, they're making great time. They turn the corner. They have a little lunch. They're going back for the second 9, and Bob dies. And they are gone all afternoon. It's starting to get dark, and people are worried about him. They finally get back to the clubhouse, and they said, what happened? Where'd you go? Well, they said, just at the end of the 10th hole, Bob died. And they said, well, why didn't you bring him back? They said, well, Bob wouldn't wanted us to bring him back. Bob would have wanted to finish the round. So we hit and drug Bob. We hit and drug Bob. And what I want you to see today is that some of us are living our life exactly like that. Like we're in the new experience, but we're dragging all the emotional pain with us, and we wonder why it takes us so long to get around, right? Today, would you be willing to say, that was then, this is now. That was then, this is now. One more time. That was then, this is now. That wherever you've experienced pain in your life, I want you to actually release the barrier. I want you to let it go. I don't want you to be dragging your past pain one more day. Mentally, emotionally, I want you to be free to experience all the goodness of God. Will you pray with me? I want you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. And today we release all the drama, all the pain, all the discomfort, all the old crazy beliefs that have kept us locked away. And we allow our life to be filled with the luck of Spirit. the luck of God, the blessings of God too numerous to name. So we release the old stories, we release the old drama, we release the old pain, and we are made new from the inside out. So in the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen. God bless you all. And together, I am a very lucky person. One more time. I am a very lucky person. God bless you all. Have a great day.